My name is Christina Frank. The name of my work is called Forest Jewels, and it is a series of gum leaves that I've made that are suspended from the gum trees that are part of the remnant forest that is here in Eden Gardens. I'm a visual artist. I work across a variety of media, and I found myself doing quite a lot of sort of installation work in recent years. A lot of it could be classed as ephemeral, although it does last longer than I think it's going to last. I'd say that my practice is drawing based, but I use clay and I use fabric, and I like responding to environmental sort of situations, so to be in a site that inspires, like this one. I was just actually thinking that this site here particularly is actually quite connected to where I grew up, in that I grew up in a creek valley, which is sort of in the headwaters of the Lane Cove River system, and I spent a lot of my time playing in the sort of creek that ran down in our back garden and the bush that was that surrounded us, and exploring down creeks. And this is actually directly connected to that sort of childhood experience that fed my sort of motivation and creativity. And well, the first sculpture I ever made was made of clay that I dug out of the creek that feeds into the Lane Cove River. This is a really interesting site in that it's surrounded by highways on two sides, but you have the Lane Cove National Park on the other. So the site that I've responded to is actually spilling over from the Lane Cove National Park with that remnant forest. I love the idea that it's a garden that's been created, and you've got that sort of meeting of design and human creativity and exotic plants with the natural landscape systems. I called my work Forest Jewels because I wanted to draw attention to the fact that they are special and that they are rare. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in the last few years actually looking at leaves, and looking particularly at eucalypt leaves. I spent my lockdown collecting eucalypt leaves, and I made an artwork that involved 15,000 eucalypt leaves. I suppose that sort of fed into my interest in looking at leaves individually. I love the fact that a leaf is part of a tree, and a tree really bears testament to the place and the experience of that tree. So, its time span goes back beyond ours, and it has its sort of forebears. So, it's a tangible connection back to the history of that place, the botanical history and the history of people, and way back. So I love that idea that a tree bears witness to place and history, and I wanted to represent that in my leaves. So on the one hand, I've created them like they're a botanical specimen, so I've enlarged them, and I've tried to create the sort of vein structure and the particular structure of the particular trees that I'm working with, which is mostly the scribbly gums. So I've got 6 leaves, 5 of them are scribbly gums, Eucalyptus hemistona, and Angophora costata. So with the scribbly gums, I've put some moths in there, which would represent the moths of the larvae that create the scribbles on the bark. I wanted to make them sort of transparent and sort of ethereal and sparkling, and so when the sun shines through it, they're transparent and sort of, shining in the sun. To make them jewel-like, to make them as if they're special. And so each one had its sort of own individual patina and personality, if you like. So I wanted to draw attention to that, and I suppose there's an analogy there with human beings. We're everyday, but we're extraordinary, and the same is for leaves. One of my motivations for doing this artwork is to draw attention to the vulnerability of some of these eucalypt species. That we're facing some species of eucalypt not being able to survive climate change because of the change to those very specific conditions. The major challenge is to try and create an ethereal looking work, transparent and light and delicate and fragile, at the same time as being able to last 6 months. I'm so pleased they've lasted to date. With 2 major weather events so far. I've made a wire framework. I've used recycled coat hangers as the major framework, and then I've used other sorts of wire to create the vein structure, and I've overlaid it with fabrics and stitched it all in, and hoping my stitching will hold.